And welcome back to the Book and Life podcast. Today we're going to be sitting down with one of the most amazing, sensual, history gripping, and mouth-watering writers of the century. But before we do that, I'm going to talk you through a little bit from Marianne Curley and her book, The Shadow. The battle is over, the war is won, the prophecy complete, but life can't just pick up where it left off for Ethan. Struggling to cope with tragic loss at odds with friends in the guard, he finds himself adrift, jumping at shadows and sensing someone who can't possibly be there. Blaming herself for the goddess Lathenia's death, Giselle swears revenge and fulfy the immortals' plan for world domination, but Giselle hadn't planned on love, and that leaves her with an unbearable choice. Should she follow her heart or the strings of a goddess, short on praise but high on expectation, who continues to pull her from the grave? As the guard and the order battle through the past and into the impossible future, darkness lurks around every corner. The fight for the world's survival rests with just one. Is it friend or foe who stands in the shadow? And it's just a reminder that the book 4 of the Guardian series is out now. Now we're going to get on and speak with Anna Bradley. Welcome.
Oh, thank you so much. That was quite an introduction.
I'm good with the introductions. I'm not so good with the memory part. I have to write everything down. People laugh at me because usually they see all these notes around me, and I'll be like, "Yeah, because I always have the formats set up on the computer so I can remember where I'm going." I'm terrible.
No.
So let's hear from you about either a current book you're really excited about or one you're going to be releasing soon. We want to hear all the juicy details that you want to share.
All the juicy details. Okay. Well, I mean, the one I'm most excited about right now is also the one I'm going to be releasing. It's the second book in the Games Earls Play series. It's a series of 5 kind of longish novellas, and
right.
This one's called Odd Earl Out, and I'm excited by it. I love the cover. That's part of it, which sounds crazy, but the cover is just so much like what I pictured it would be, which doesn't always happen. So that was fun. And I love the characters, especially the hero, because he's kind of grumpy.
I love the title, Odd Earl Out. That really does stand out with, it stands out, compared to like a lot of the sort of historical romances that's been coming out. That kind of sounds a lot more fun in a way.
I have definitely kind of hit or miss with my titles, but I like that one too.
Yeah, I know that feeling. When I do titles, I am awful, but luckily I have a co-author that'll turn to me and say that. Yeah.
Yeah, I wish I need a critic.
Well, I mean, that's the great thing. I never thought writing with a co-author would be fun or would be easy. And then I started working with Joey Legend, and we wrote Marie's World, and we did it in a month. Just sitting every morning, going through the story, talking through any holes that we might have found. And he helped with the series. He helped with the series name, and he helped with reining me in, because I have a terrible habit of going over the top with some of my ideas.
We all do.
And yeah, it did. It helped me learn that slow down, enjoy the writing, actual experience, rather than thinking, I gotta get this done. Because I always had the mindset of, right, I've got to hit 15,000.
Oh, I do, yeah.
Many days, or, you know what I mean? Like, I always was trying to be super disciplined. And he was like this, such a laid back, nonchalant guy.
Wow.
Who's nothing like his wrestling character. And he would just be like, if we get 5 pages done today, that's good enough.
Oh my God, I want a partner like that.
I know, right? And I'm
That's
thinking,
perfect.
where have you been since I started this journey? But yeah, he was fantastic, and I was super lucky to work with him. And we still do go back and forth sometimes with we are working on some of the Marie's World books. We just haven't released any.
Right.
And yeah, it's just that chemistry that I think we created within 2 weeks of meeting each other.
That's
We've never met
amazing.
in person, just
Wow.
over like phone, Skype, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. It's rare
It's
too to find a partner like that that you really, you know, jive with
Yeah,
immediately.
and especially like everyone says, how did you figure out a way to work with a wrestler? Because wrestlers don't
Yeah.
tend to write things. And I was like, well, he has a very intelligent mind. He's read a lot of books and he gets the process. He just
Right.
needed me to like educate him on breaking it down and like teach him all the areas that wouldn't otherwise be pointed out to people.
Right, right.
So yeah, but he was really amazing, and we did a semi-main hybrid publisher who, bless their socks, did not have any idea about promoting somebody that wasn't from the UK. So,
Uh,
we struggled with them for a while, and then we went back to the independent publishing
mhm.
scene, which so grateful for because I've had such good experiences there, and I've learned so much over the years there.
That's
Um,
good. Yeah.
yeah, and then when we decided to leave a company that we'd worked with for quite some time, we just said, well, we don't want to take these books from the readers, so I just stuck them back up on Amazon and said,
Oh,
guys,
good.
you deserve to have them, and
Yeah.
they've been up there for a while now. So
That's really great. It is
he's
about the readers for sure when all is said and done, right?
yeah, and that's the thing for me. Like, I didn't get in it to make millions of dollars. I'm not that kind of person. I got in
Uh-huh.
it because I've got like a world, literally a universe that lives inside my brain.
Hmm. Yeah.
And if I am bored, which happens periodically, I will wander off down one of these little corridors that appears and I get sucked into those worlds. I don't know if
Yeah.
that's what it's like for other writers, but that's what happens with me.
Yeah. Yeah. I
And then
think
a
it's
new book
different for
arrives.
everybody, but yeah, that's that
It's
sounds
it's it's a
familiar
weird experience. Yeah. So, is there any other things that you're really excited about, or you would like to share with us?
Yeah, well, the two series I have going right now is that Games Earls Play, which is the next release. It's May 31st is the release. But I also have another one of the Swooning Virgins books coming out, and it's not until the fall. I think they said October, early October. Um,
All right, cool.
yeah, so it's yeah, so I've kind of got two going at the same time and alternating sort of release dates between
How
those
do
two
you
projects.
find that? Do you find that difficult, or do you find it quite easy because you've got guidance on like notes and
Well, I
organization, or
Yeah, I have a ton of that. I've never really done it before, Crystal. Really, this is the first time I've had two projects going at the same time because I'm very
oh,
much
cool.
the type that focuses on one at a time. But it's actually been easier than I thought. And I kind of like the series are really, really different from each other. And so there's something really nice about kind of okay, well now I'm doing this, and this is sort of a darker series with a mysterious edge to it, and it's more of an intense read. And then the Games Girls Play is lighter and fun and funny, and so I get to do both, which I like.
Yeah. I think that's great because for me, I got pigeonholed in sports romance. And
Uh,
I always was like, I want to write something else. And it
yeah,
wasn't until I got free of my agent and I just sort of sat, I ended up filling two notebooks within, I
wow,
think, a couple of months with just different stories I wanted to tell. And I
right,
sat there and I looked at myself and I said, no, you know what? I'm going to take time away from the industry and I'm going to write this. And then, of course, the pandemic hit.
Right, right. That changed everything.
Yeah, totally threw all my plans out the window because
Too, yeah.
I'd moved back to Shetland and I had gone back to being a learning assistant for schools, and I thought I can write at night, have a stable
Yeah.
income job, write on my days that I'm not working because I was doing it as a relief worker,
Hmm.
and I thought, this is how I'll do it. And of course, with the pandemic hit, I had to teach at home.
Yeah, that kind of
And
throws a
it
wrench.
was the weirdest experience
Yeah.
because you're supposed to be helping a child in class, but you're not sat beside them.
That's really hard.
And they struggle with the whole, how do I ask this teacher for help?
Right.
So I would have to have like a sidebar going with the kid to make sure that they were
Oh,
learning
right.
while also participating myself,
Yeah. Yeah.
because that was kind of how my kids were. They were not super confident kids and they liked to see us adults take part because if we are stupid enough to do it, then they think it's fun. I have never
Oh,
done a day of French in my life, and I got must have been about 4 French classes a week, and I can
oh
still not
wow.
talk French. But we played French games for a week, for the whole lockdown, and I was terrible at the game.
Did they? They probably had fun though, right?
They thought it was hilarious, and then the one day I won. One of the days I managed to win. I don't know how I did it. I'll never be able to do it again. And one of the boys that I was working with, he went, "Yay, Ms. Bain won!" And I'm like, "Oh, that's cute." And my hubby goes, "You're really sad, you know that."
I think that's really sweet.
Yeah, and funnily enough, at that point, I hadn't gotten married. I got married in November, so yeah,
Congratulations.
they all got so stammered on what to call me. So sometimes I get Mrs. Bain, and sometimes I get Ms. Bain, and yeah, it was always funny. But I
Yeah.
always sort of look at that time in the pandemic as a reset button. I think
Yeah.
a lot of us writers, especially if we've got kids or family and we're staying with family, our priorities shift.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was definitely the case for me.
Yeah.
How was it for you?
Well, you mean specifically the pandemic or
Well, yeah,
just
it was.
priorities?
Do you think it impacted on your career? Did it make you sort of change how you did things?
I do think it impacted in the sense that, I mean, I didn't go anywhere. I swear to God, I didn't do any, appearances. I didn't go to any conferences. I didn't really get to see any other writers or readers in person. And so that was hard, especially I really like talking to other writers. And it's, because,
Same.
you're stuck, it's very isolating. Writing's isolating. And I don't mean that as a complaint because I love what I do, but, you're by yourself in an office with a computer, and so you don't get as much of that, you know, social outlet that say like a
Yeah.
go to work job would provide. So when COVID
Yeah.
hit, it was all gone. I mean, just completely. It's just me and the computer, and of course, my kids and husband were home as well. So we got to do more stuff together and hang out more, which was good. But I feel like it was almost like the walls closing in a little bit,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
I got a lot of
I
writing done, but it was hard.
I had to. It was so weird because I had been with my partner for so long.
Yeah.
He understood my whole writing process. So if he saw the headphones on
Hmm.
and me typing, that meant don't talk to her, she's writing,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Right.
So he knew, like, okay, Crystal's in the zone. I'm not going to talk to her. I'll just edge around her and
Hmm.
just do my own thing.
The smart man.
But yeah, very smart. Oh, he is super smart. And unfortunately, my mom didn't get it at all.
Oh, Yeah, bombs are
She,
a whole other thing.
yeah, like I got stuck in a you know how you get into a writing groove where you get so sucked in that you
Hmm.
almost forget the world exists?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
I fell into one for 3 days,
Wow.
which is not uncommon for me.
Wow.
However, my mom started to complain that I smelled funny, that my hair was sticking up in different directions.
Leave it to the
She
mother.
literally took me to a mirror in the bathroom and said, "Look at
Oh.
this hair." Because I had
Oh.
really long hair at the
Uh-huh.
time. And I went, "But I'm writing." She goes,
Right.
"You're not now. You're going for the shower."
Oh no. Oh my gosh.
Like, my whole groove just went poof.
Well,
And I
that's
was
the
like,
thing, is that you lose it, you can lose it in an instant. So I try to
yeah,
keep my office door closed and my kids will come in and I'd say, don't come in unless you really need something. Well,
like your
it's
finger is
just,
falling off. Yeah.
right, exactly. Like, is the house on fire? Because if it isn't, so but they were, especially when they were younger, not so much now. They'd still
Yeah.
come in like, where's this shirt or where, and they don't, it's only a few minutes of an interruption, but it takes me a long time to get back into the groove of it, like where I
Yeah.
was. Once you're out, you're kind of out. So you have to get back in there somehow.
Yeah, and that's where kind of Ian puts up with quite a lot because if I'm in the zone, which I haven't been for a while because I haven't been writing as much. I've been studying for my university course.
Ah.
But when I do get in it, he I forget the dishes. I forget
Oh, yeah.
the washing because these are things that we're supposed to do. Uh, I only cook for myself anyway, but sometimes I'll forget to cook. I'll forget to eat
I do
sometimes.
too. Yep.
Yeah,
I've done
yep,
that
and
too.
that's really bad. And he'll come over to me and he'll say, "Have you eaten today?" And I'll hold up an apple because you can type and eat an apple at the same time or something.
Right.
And he'll be like, "That's not enough food
For a day. Right.
for a day."
Yeah.
So he'll then sneak out and he'll buy me grilled cheese toasties, or he'll come
Nice.
back with like a Chinese or a
That's
chippy,
that's
from the
really
chip shop.
nice. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's amazing. And he'll put up with me sitting up at like 2 o'clock in the morning going, "I've got it." And he's almost like, the arm comes out. You know how you seatbelt children in the car when you have to brake? He does that. It's just like this arm flies out and hits me in the
Automatic.
chest and
Yeah.
just fires me back down. And he goes, "Sleep." And I'm
He
like,
understands what it's like to live with a writer.
"Yeah." And and I almost go, "But I don't want to." And he goes, "Sleep."
There's no sleep
Okay.
after that. Once you think about it, once you get the
Yep.
thing, you're like, okay, now I
I've
can't
seen
sleep.
I've seen me get up at like 3:30, 4 o'clock in the
Hmm.
morning,
Yep.
just completely needing to write,
Yep.
come in, no coffee, don't even say hello to my cats,
Hmm.
who get very upset because I've not, given them their morning food.
Right. Yeah.
And I just start writing. And it's so funny because the cats will refuse to wait now.
Oh.
So if I don't feed them first, I don't get to write.
Do they stand on your
'Cause
computer? That's what mine do.
they
They'll stand on the computer.
they'll stand on the computer. One of them is very known for standing on my lap with his paws on my chest
Oh.
and putting his face right up against mine and continually saying in his little angry voice, "Mama,"
I
as
want
if
some
he's
food.
admonishing me.
They're
And
not
then I
very
go,
patient.
"Yeah." And he's ginger and white, honestly. He's so fluffy and he gets away with so much just because he's cute. And I'll
Well,
go,
yeah.
"Fine." And then I'll go through and I'll say, "Right, I'll feed them." And I make the cup of coffee and I go back through and I'll just write. And then he'll come through at 12 o'clock or something because he's a
Yeah.
long liar. And he'll look at me and he'll go, "How's the book?" And depending on what facial expression he gets, he knows it's a good or bad experience.
Right.
Or if I turn around and say, "God damn it, my editor's just sent my edits back,"
Ugh,
he knows that
that's
the editor's been a bit brutal.
Right.
So then he'll say things like, I'll take the cats to the room and
Mm,
I'll see you in a couple hours.
he
I'll
sounds
wait till the
perfect.
business,
Yeah.
stops coming out your ears, and he'll say, do you want to go for a run in the car? Yes, you can take your notebook.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
That's
know?
true. Just getting away from it sometimes makes a big difference.
Yeah, and he was such a driving force to do this podcast, which is to bring us authors closer together, especially
Right.
since we're all global.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's also really a good way to kind of not replace the conferences because we can't replace them,
No,
but
but
bring
yeah.
some of the aspects of the conferences back to life to people who are maybe high risk, who are maybe scared of going, who
Right.
haven't maybe
Right.
gotten back to their normal day lives yet.
Right.
And there's so many people suffering from long COVID
I
that I
know.
thought,
I
well, this
know.
show needs to happen now, you know?
Yeah, I agree. That's a really good thing. Yeah,
And also
because you
we get to
can't.
debunk myths about us,
Yeah.
authors.
Yeah, and I
Because
think
there's so
that
many myths about us now. It's
so
kind of
many
crazy.
myths about writers. Yeah. I think that with writers too, it's like you have to talk to other writers because nobody else really gets it. Like it's such a weird profession and you feel it's hard to explain to somebody who doesn't do it what it's
Yeah,
like. And so but another writer will be like, "Oh yeah, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking." Like, so you get that. It's almost
yeah.
like a reinforcement. Like, okay, I'm not the only one who does, X, Y, or Z, and all of us do it.
And
Like
I
instant
laugh
understanding.
because um, somebody once explained writing to me as, well, wrestlers date wrestlers because they're always on the road and they
Hmm.
don't see anybody else, and normal people are not very accommodating to their schedules.
Hmm.
And doctors date doctors because they work really stupid hours.
Right.
And I thought, huh. And then I met Ian,
Hmm. What does
and
he
we
is
are
he
totally.
insane?
He was originally a shop fitter, and then
Oh, okay.
he ended up being my long term care because I've got debilitating arthritis.
Oh,
And oh yeah, I got it at 2.5. I'm so
oh
used to it now.
wow.
I'm like, yeah.
That's yeah.
And it was so he takes care of me full time, but it is so funny because here's this Scottish motorbike driving, leather wearing metalhead, and then you have me, who's the cowboy boot wearing, shotgun loving,
Uh-huh.
pickup truck wanting to drive but can't, horse riding fanatical girl.
It's
So
opposites attract. Yay.
we are total opposites.
Hmm.
And then he discovered my slight book addiction,
Hmm.
which started off not too bad. And now that I've been with him for 14 years,
Wow.
I'm nearly 1,000 books, which I'm
Yeah.
starting to feel slightly guilty about. Um,
Nah.
it's bad when your hubby's like, I got you bookcases for your Christmas because, well, you don't have any bookshelf space left.
That was a
And
good
I'm
gift.
tired. And I'm tired of the leaning of Pisa that sits at the
Yeah,
side of
yeah.
the bed that I'm pretty sure is going to conk me in the middle of the night.
Yeah, that makes
Um,
sense.
yeah, it's just, you realize you have a problem then. And I kind of laugh to myself and I think, well, it could be worse addictions.
It could absolutely. Right.
And
I
I said,
mean,
it's a cheaper hobby than going horse riding.
right. And a book is, I
Yeah.
mean, there's no downside there.
There is if you're stuck in the hospital and you ask your partner to bring you in a book and you don't give him a title.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah, a
I
partner
made that
set loose
mistake.
among your books. Yeah, that could be
Yep.
dangerous.
And then I came back and none of my shelves were the same.
Oh, no, really?
Couldn't find anything.
Oh, no, I don't like it when people, yeah, yeah, I'm kind of
I was
protective
like,
about my,
well, it wasn't just that. He'd gone through looking for stuff that I would want to read, and he came back with Edward, the new book from Twilight,
Mhm.
which was huge. I don't think he realized just how heavy that thing
Oh,
was.
yeah, yeah.
So I'm like in a bed trying to read. It was not easy. And he also brought me one of Rachel Cane's novels, which I was
Oh,
actually grateful for because I love Rachel Cane. Bless her, she's no longer with us. And then my mom had basically gone on a cleaning spree,
no.
took all the books off the shelves,
Oh, no.
but forgot what order they went in when I came back.
Oh, no. So everything's a mess when you get back.
No genre, because I do my bookcases by genre.
Mm.
So like, one bookcase will just be all period drama because I love period
Right.
drama. I grew up on Catherine Cookson and Mills and Boone,
Yeah.
and then like my next one will be all fantasy because sometimes I just need a break from contemporary and
Mhm.
historical fiction. And sometimes it's nice just to say, okay, what's happening in the fantasy world.
Right.
And then I'll move on, and I've got my YA. Now, my YA collection's fairly big because I'm planning on having a family, so I was like, yep, need
Yeah.
YA. Need to know what
Hold on to
YA
it.
is.
Yep. Yep.
Yep. I even have kids' books, which my niece just does not pay attention to when she comes up because she only wants her Uncle Ian. But it was like, I had a whole system, and I
Yeah.
am still repairing said system
Oh,
since she
no.
cleaned my house.
That's the worst.
My mother-in-law is like, I'll clean your house for you. And I'm thinking, oh, the books. Oh, no.
Don't touch the books.
No, I can't. No, I can't let you do it. And she's like, why not? And I'm like, because you'll bin the books. She's a
You'll mess with
minimalist.
it.
And I was just like, the idea of anybody binning any of the books, I
I
couldn't handle it.
know. I
No,
hear
no.
you. Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
is so funny. So we're going to jump into the book topic in a
Okay.
bit more detail. So the first question I'm going to ask is, what is the book that you've read recently that stuck with you the most?
I recently read Gail Honeyman's Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine, and that
All
book really
right.
stuck with me. Um, it's kind of a quiet book, I mean, it's the protagonist is really sort of withdrawn, and she's scarred and wounded, and she's hiding it not just from the people around her, but from herself.
Right,
And
right.
it was restrained, but still parts of it just so sad. And I thought it was interesting the way Gail Honeyman handled that.
Yeah, it
So
sounds
that character
different.
stuck
Yeah.
with me. Yeah, I enjoyed it a lot.
Because for me, I I've read a few like that. There was a Thorns and Roses series
Mhm.
that had one that was like that.
Yeah,
And then I read Christine Freeham's got a couple of books with that kind
right.
of idea to them.
Yeah.
I'm a feisty girl reader, if you
Hmm.
know what I mean. I
I do.
love my protagonists to be like me, a ball of fire,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
and the leading guy to be like, what the hell have I
What
come
is going
across?
on? What have I gotten
What
myself into?
do I
Yeah,
do with this? Yeah,
yeah.
like, and I think because I love writing that style, I tend to seek it out in all the books I have.
Right, right.
But I feed that back to my love of Catherine Cookson. And
Yeah, I could see
because
that.
that was like the first adult book that I read, and I shouldn't have read it at 10.
Well, I read those books really young too, like way younger than
Yeah.
I started way younger than I guess would be quote unquote appropriate. But
Yeah,
hey, I mean,
my mom didn't realize, like, I think she just owned a few and just was like not aware of the
yeah, no,
content,
yeah, exactly.
you know?
Yeah, same. Yeah.
But she did hide the Mills and Boone books, just not very well, because I knew they
Oh,
were in her
see,
top drawer of her bedside table.
it's like I
And
can
I
find
knew
those
if my
ones.
dad was at work, I could sneak in there and get them without her catching me.
That's
Um,
funny.
yeah, oh,
I
she
remember
hated
doing
that.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't know it, but she bought them monthly.
Oh,
It
yeah.
didn't have like a subscription. It was like she would sneak because we had dial up, and you'll know how
Oh,
bad dial up is, right?
yeah, I do. Yeah.
And it's she used to, she didn't think I saw this, but she would put the coffee maker on, and then all I would hear is the sound of dial up, and it was
Right.
AOL
The
dial.
screech. Yeah.
Yep, the screech would start,
Mhm.
and then she would be like, okay, you're going to go for a bath, or I'd get fired somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So one day I thought, my mom's up to something. I don't like this. I'm going to see what she's up to. And I snuck through and I saw her ordering the modern line of Mills and Boons. And I was like, aha.
Really? Haha.
So so once I figured out that there was more than just,
Mm-hmm.
the modern line,
Right.
I started exploring it, and historical fiction, like the historical romance and the
Mm-hmm.
historical inspire, soon became my favorite.
Mm-hmm.
However, my nan soon discovered this, and I got a very hot lug
Oh
as she told
no.
me, this is not suitable for you. I will
Oh,
now be monitoring what you
oh
take out the
no.
library.
That's the worst. Oh.
But with her guidance, I did find some incredible authors. I found Marianne Curley,
Mm-hmm.
I found Celia Reese, and these are global sensation,
Mm-hmm.
children's authors who,
Right.
when you're growing up in Shetland,
You need to,
there's not
yeah.
such thing as a household name really, unless it's
Right.
like fishing
Right. I
or
hear you.
related to fishing.
Yeah. I guess
People
that makes
talk a lot about fishing up there or the weather. The
yeah.
amount of conversations I used to have walking down the street about the weather.
Yeah. Like yeah,
I'd
the
only go
fishing.
5 feet and somebody else would say, "Oh, what do you think of this dear wee weather we're having?" Uh,
It's like I already
5 feet.
went over that.
Basically, it meant that, what am I thinking of this awful, cloudy, mucky
Right.
weather? Uh,
Right.
and I just laughed. That there was no sensational stuff that really ever happened in Shetland. In fact, there's only been 2 murders in 50 years.
That's not a bad thing,
Um,
right?
no, and
That's
nobody
insane.
has their cars nicked
No,
because
it's
there's nowhere
safe
to
and
drive them,
yeah. Yeah.
and there's no burglaries because they're all nosy neighbors, so they'll get told by their next door neighbor, "Oh yeah, so and so was trying your door," right?
Oh my
So you
god.
can't burgle anybody,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so people leave their doors open all day unless
Hmm.
they're going for a long time from their house. And I went from that to Glasgow.
Oh, right. Right. That's
And
quite a big
Glasgow
difference.
is a yeah, huge
Glasgow's busy.
city. Yep. Where lots happened
Hmm.
in a very short space of time. I got a
Yeah.
very quick education on certain things.
I bet that was must have been crazy. That's
Yeah,
such a, culture shock.
and it was because I'd spent half of my life in Aberdeen, and
Mm.
Aberdeen for the majority of my life was pretty much the same as
Hmm.
living in Shetland.
Right.
So going to Glasgow, and yes, you've got community spirit in Glasgow, and it's such a strong community spirit,
Hmm.
but there is a lot of crime. A
Oh yeah.
lot of crime. And
Cities now. Yeah.
yeah, and that shocked me.
Mm.
And it gave me almost self preservation,
Yeah. I could see
which my
that.
best friend reckoned that would, up to the point of me moving on with Ian, did not think that I could ever obtain, because I was the kind of person that would forget to look both ways before crossing the road.
Hmm. Right.
I was terrible. And, so she had a panic attack when she heard I was going to Glasgow.
Yeah. I could see
Because I
that.
literally phoned her on the boat saying, "Hey, you know that guy that I told you that I was going to go, that was coming up to date me? Well, we've been together 7 days and I'm moving in with him."
Wow.
And
Well, watch
it
out.
just blew her mind. Like,
Yeah.
she said, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" And I went, "I'm following the advice of romance."
Yeah.
And she said, "How drunk are you?" And I went, "I'm fucking sober. Thank you very much." And she goes, "Are you high?" And I went, "No, I'm not fucking high," right? So losing my mind a little bit there. And she tries to talk me out of it, and I'm like, "Bit late. I'm in the North Sea and
It's
I've
too
left
late.
Shetland. And
Wow.
she literally said to me, if you get in trouble, get on the train to Liverpool and I'll meet you.
Aw, she's a good friend, huh?
Yeah, and because she knows that my taste in men up to eating was pretty bad.
Hmm. Yeah. So
So
she,
yeah,
yeah,
and
she's careful.
it's still kind of like the running joke among my friends that I couldn't be anything but a romance author because I was so much a jump in both feet kind of
Yeah. Yeah.
gal.
I can see that.
Um,
Yep.
I love protagonists that do that.
Like fiery. Yeah, no, I exactly. I tend to have heroines that are that way as well. Um,
Yeah, they're
and
fun
alpha
though.
heroes, sort of thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and sometimes it's fun when the girl is just a little bit stronger than the guy.
Right. Strong-willed. Right.
Hmm.
Definitely not manageable. Those are the fun heroines. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, I mean that's the reason I like Fiona Cummings, for instance. She was on 2 weeks ago,
Hmm.
and her novel is incredible, and she has that same kind of tenacity with her writing.
Yeah.
That a lot of the women are really strong
Hmm.
figures, and I like that about her.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you had time, everything was nice and quiet and calm, and you could just sit and enjoy an author, a series, or one
Hmm.
of their standalones, who would it be? What
Oh,
series would it be, and why?
that's such a great question. There's a bunch of writers who I've read a couple of books like Christina Lauren and Kerrigan Byrne and Lorraine Heath, some of the big romance, the historical romance writers. Um,
Yeah,
and I'd love to just like front to back read the entire series of any one of those writers. And
yeah,
it's tough because especially for historical, if I'm really really in the middle of a project, I tend not to read much historical, just because I don't want to inadvertently. I don't want to. It's weird. Like I need to be sure that what's in my head is mine, right?
yeah. Oh no, I get
So
that. Yeah,
so I don't get as many. I don't get to read. I don't get to read as much as, especially historical romance, as I would like.
so
And
so that
so
would be your number one thing, sitting.
yeah, historic. I like contemporary romance as well, and I like just contemporary fiction too.
Yeah,
But I can read those while I'm writing. It's really historical
yeah,
that I can't really read as much. And so I'd love to just do something like that, like just have a month to just sort of read all this, all these backlists, my to be read list, which is really really long.
I know that
And I
feeling.
hate it when people will say, "Have you read this and have you read that?" And you're like, "Oh no, it's on my Kindle or it's in my room or but I haven't
Yep.
had a chance to read it." So yeah.
Yeah. And that's like the one of the things that I'm doing, particularly with this podcast, is there's a lot of historical writers that is being
Mhm.
forgotten because it's not the most popular genre to read at the moment.
Oh, right, right.
And I kind of feel like that's a huge shame. Like
It
when
is.
I
Yeah,
talk about Catherine Cookson, she was a dame. She was made a
yeah.
dame by the Queen.
Oh, that's a crazy.
And
Yeah, great.
I say she changed the game with historical fiction.
Oh, I think for absolutely. Yeah, she's one
Yeah.
of the ones that did. Yeah.
And I look at her and I think, wow, like she was dyslexic like me. She,
Oh, I didn't know that.
yeah, that's what most
Mhm.
people don't realize is she had severe dyslexic, severe depression, and she didn't have the support necessarily that she should have had.
Mhm.
So for her publisher, all those books, she made that conscious decision that she sat down and she told the publisher, I'm going to write this the way that I talk.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
And she said, if you want people to believe that they're in this time period, I have to write it the way that I talk because I grew up in she was a servant in a house.
Mhm. Oh,
She
she
grew
did.
up, yeah, she grew up poor. She grew up straight and together. And then she fell in love with writing. And here was the thing that I thought was astounding. Here's a maid working 12 hours in a
Oh,
house, and then she
right.
goes upstairs
Oh
with a
man.
candle and she writes.
That's
Like,
amazing because the being a
that's
maid,
dedication.
yeah, it's almost impossible to imagine because
Yeah, and
how
she
exhausting.
started as a really young child, and I admired that. And then through kind of like when I realized some of her books were being series were being ended for her by another
Hmm.
writer,
Oh.
I was not sure about reading them, to be honest. But the woman Rosie, I want to say Rosie Goodwoman,
Hmm.
wrote the end of the Chili Trotter series,
Hmm.
and it was exactly how she would have done it. It
Really?
felt like it fit. It felt like the
Yeah.
missing piece in the puzzle. And from there, I actually seen an advert for Leslie Pierce, and I ended up just falling in love with Leslie Pierce's work. The Gypsy's been the one from hers that I read this past year, and it stuck with me. It's like
Yeah.
right
Yeah.
there in my head, and I
Yeah.
love her work, and she's so prolific that I know
Hmm.
I'll never run out of her stuff.
Yeah,
I'll
that's
still
always
be
a
reading her
problem, right?
stuff.
I've read all of them.
Yeah,
All. Nothing.
because
Nothing.
I'm looking at my shelf right now, and I had no idea what I was taking on when I looked at the Paul Dark series by
Oh
Winston
yeah.
Graham.
Yeah.
And I'm just looking at it thinking, I haven't even started that. And
Right.
I got Catherine Cookson for my birthday,
Oh, so
but
you have to.
it's
Yeah.
all of them. It's
It's a big commitment
everyone's
to
cheap.
start it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So now it looks kind of like I stood up the ones I've already read.
Yeah.
But the ones on their sides, there's all these short stories that I had no idea she'd done. And there's a lot of these short stories
Oh, I
I
didn't know
didn't know
that either.
she'd done.
Yeah.
But they're not in one book. They're kind of
Right. Spread out.
separate.
Right.
So I almost sort of stare at it and go, "Oh,
That's a lot.
wow,
Yeah.
that's a lot."
That's a
Yeah,
lot.
and
It's a
then
commitment.
somebody decided Crystal doesn't have enough readers, historical writers to read. I'm going to introduce her to Elizabeth Chatwick.
Oh boy. How many books has she written? She's pretty prolific too.
So many,
I know.
so many. I
Yeah.
read her very first the first one I was given, and
Mhm.
I thought it was part of a series, right?
Mhm. They
No,
usually are
they're
these
all
days. Yeah.
standalone, right?
Yeah.
There's the stuff, but that wasn't really explained on Goodreads,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so I ended up with 8 of hers
Wow.
right away,
Right.
and then I found Jean Pleam,
They
Pleamed,
like they
Pleamed.
lead, it's like a chain reaction. One leads
Yeah,
to the next. To, yeah.
and I just thought, I mean, that's like the 3 new authors I found this year. And I
Oh,
was
that's pretty.
like,
Yeah, that's pretty good.
but I always say to myself, every year I gotta find one new author to try.
Right. Right. That's a good
Because
goal. I should do that.
yeah, and it's the idea behind it is I want to raise up other authors, right?
Yeah, that's a
I want
great
this,
way to think of
yeah,
it. Yeah.
to be a fraternity, to support each other,
Right.
to
Right.
help each other along. And my hubby went, if we get any more books, this house will be a public library.
You're like, would that be so bad? That's
I
so
did. I actually did say that to him. I was like, there was a job that came up for working in the local library, and I'm like, Ian, I applied. And he's like, you just got out of serious stuff from the hospital. You're not going to work in the library.
right.
I'm like,
Right.
but it's the dream. No,
It's
because he says you'd
that's
bring them all home, and I would have no space in bed.
oh my gosh.
So
Yeah.
it got killed, but yeah,
Aw,
he had the same
gotta switch
idea as
down.
you. Yeah, you gotta love partners
I
who's
know.
slightly scared of the weight of our apartment.
Yeah. True.
So would you say that your genre that you're drawn to when you visit bookstores and online stores, would I be right in saying that would be historical fiction, or is there another genre that you tend to drift
Historical
to?
fiction, historical romance, just regular romance. Of course.
Yeah.
Any kind of romance I'll try for sure. But also, yeah, more of contemporary fiction that isn't necessarily romance. I'm interested in that too. And I never object to like a good thriller or mystery or, gosh, I read everything, to be honest.
So do I.
I try to, I try not to, I'm not a big horror reader. So
No,
there is that.
I'm
I'm
with you
not,
there.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but otherwise, yeah. I mean, I'll go look through. That's why nobody will go to a bookstore with me because I want to stay there for a really long time and look at everything.
I would go with you.
You would go with
So
me. Yeah, I could
yeah,
see that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, because my best friend says, "No, Crystal, we're not going to the bookshop today."
I don't have a spare 7 hours, so we're not going to the bookstore.
Yeah, and the thing is, she drives now,
Uh-huh.
which is incredible because she never used to drive. And
Mm.
it's that way where I know she could drive me into Glasgow, where there's the really, really, really big bookshop.
Oh,
And
nice.
she's like, Ian would kill me. I will take you to the little tiny independent bookstore in
Where you've read
Stirling,
everything.
and that's it. But even in there, it's like there's just floor to ceiling
Yeah,
bookcases,
that's
but
the
there's a
thing.
little cafe too.
Yeah.
So like you navigate your way along, or in Crystal's case, I'm walking along the bookcases. My friend asks me, "Do you want coffee or tea?" And I'll just say whatever comes to my
Mhm.
mind. And I continue walking along, and I have a look, and I see, oh, that's classics, and
Mhm.
I'll go through them all
Right.
to the point where the owner had actually ended up recognizing me from a book tour I did to Stirling.
That's funny.
And said, when you republish your stuff, or when you start publishing again, you'll have to tell me, and I'll showcase your books." And I was
Oh,
like, "Oh,
nice.
that's really
That's
nice." And then I'm
nice.
thinking, if I do that, I can't come back here.
Yeah.
Damn it. Because I used to sign for or I did do a signing for the Stirling Glasgow bookshop.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, it's very difficult for me to go into bookstores because I am so recognizable with my
Uh-huh.
brightly colored hair. Well, I've not dyed it in a long time, but usually
Right.
I have brightly colored hair. I have on distinctive outfits, so I
Mhm.
stand out.
So people recognize you. Yeah.
Yeah, and managers, they love it when they see one of the local authors come in. The only
Oh,
problem is
yeah.
I'm there to browse.
Yeah, you don't want to be the author at that moment. You just want to be the
Yeah,
reader. Yeah.
yeah. And I mean, that was the thing that me and Joe loved, was alone on a book tour. Imagine this. The person that you're advertised to be with cannot be there because he
Oh,
doesn't have a visa.
oh my gosh, really?
Yes.
How
And
odd.
you're turning up, right? And your books are only arriving a minute or two after you, so they're still in their boxes.
Oh no.
There's no banners, there's no posters up,
There's nothing. Right.
and I gotta sell these books.
Yeah, that's a hard sell. That's hard.
Yeah. So I get a little table, usually near the counter. They bring me coffee, which is free. I
Hmm.
appreciated that. And they brought
Hmm.
me pens.
Well, yeah.
But boy,
Already.
I thought my back is against the wall with this.
Yeah.
But there was not a shop that I signed in, except one, that I did not sell every single copy that they had.
That's amazing. That's
Because,
yeah.
you have to be almost like, if you're not famously known, you
Hmm.
have to be a salesman.
Right. Exactly. Right.
So there was a lot of wrestling fans that did show up at these appearances, and I
Hmm.
kind of used the hype and the activity of them to draw normal romance readers in.
Right.
And I breathed a sigh of relief when I actually seen them, because it helped. It actually helped
Yeah.
to sell the rest.
Yeah.
And I would go, oh. But I would still have to stand up and explain in every store that Joe couldn't make it.
Oh no, God, that's the worst. That's like my
And that
nightmare.
was the
Yeah.
worst part,
Yeah.
was saying that. And of course the managers would always wander off too. And
Yeah.
then people would ask when the next, or the next shipment was coming, and I couldn't answer that because I'm not the
Right.
store.
Right.
So, there was always those awkward moments. But yeah, I learned from that experience.
Yeah, I
Which is
bet.
why yeah, like it's why when I write now, my childhood dream was to write for Mills and Boon.
Ah.
And I said to myself, one day I'm going to start writing romance that's got sports and wrestlers and
Hmm.
very tiny trunks covered in baby oil. And I am going to write a series of grown-up romance novel.
Yeah.
And now I am.
Yes, now you're doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm doing it. And I'm lucky because I have been invited by Mills and Boon to actually submit. And I'm excited, but I still have that little knot in my stomach
Oh
of,
yeah. Yeah.
I'm dyslexic and is this going to work? So I have a poor editor that's sitting in the States right now, probably
Waiting for
not pleased with me because we're doing it chapter by chapter because I'm trying to make sure it's absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
slip up and I put in little words that are Scottish or little sayings that's Scottish, and she's like, if this is going to be American, I have to do it gun-ho American.
Yeah.
And, she's educating me slowly, but
Yeah.
I had two editors retire on me out of the blue over the pandemic, so I'm
Oh
playing
no.
catch up now.
I've heard a lot of stories like that. A lot of
Yeah,
stories.
and
Yeah.
I found this new editor that I fell in love with on Fiverr of all places.
Oh yeah. I've
So
done a couple graphic stuff with people from Fiverr.
yeah, and they're credible. Like
No, they were great. Yeah.
they're so good, and you've got so many safety measures in place,
Yeah.
and they are really efficient.
Yeah.
Like I love that. And I said to Stephanie, I'm like, you're it. When it comes to my adult romance novels, you're it. I'm coming back to you.
Yeah.
And I can
That's
almost hear the sigh from the US where she's like, okay. But I think
But if
she'll
you
appreciate
found
it.
somebody you like, you really need to, yeah, you hold on to them, right? I mean,
Yeah, and I'm hoping that all the investment that I've put into this novel will be what brings me to my home of Mills and Boon, which is my dream. So,
yeah.
fingers
Well,
crossed.
I hope it does too. I mean, it sounds like you're well on your way.
Yeah, and I think I've matured so much from when I first started out. Because when I first published, I was 18. It was a self-published book, and it was
Mhm.
awful.
No, that's
Absolutely
not true. But I
atrocious.
know what you mean when you go back and read your old stuff and you're like, oh my gosh, that's so, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know it needed to be edited.
Hmm.
I didn't know, like, because I thought that the self-publishing company was going to do it. The cover was so bad,
Oh man.
and it was huge. I remember it being bigger than a hardback,
Hmm.
but it was paperback.
Oh,
And I was like,
that
God,
is,
that,
God, that's a lot. Yeah.
yeah. And I thought, this is a disaster. This isn't going to work. So then I started learning about indie publishing.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that's when I kind of went on that journey.
That's really, yeah. I think
What
it's,
about for you? What it was, how did you get into the world of Mills and Boon? And
well, so it was, it's a weird story. I'd always written, for years, and I also taught writing for a bunch of years.
what?
And I was kind of at loose ends because I was kind of sick of teaching. And I thought, well,
Yeah.
I'm not really getting the satisfaction out of it, teaching writing that I want. But I also wasn't in a position to stop because we had two little kids and it was a teaching writing at the college level was really flexible. And so it worked
Yeah.
out really, really well that for me to do it. So I couldn't stop doing it. So I thought, maybe I'll write a book. I'll try to write a romance and just see how it goes. You know, I'll pick back up again, sort of where I dropped it years before.
Yeah.
And I ended up writing the book. That book ended up being A Wicked Way to Win an Earl, which, after I finished it, and it took me like a year and a half to write that book because I was so busy with kids and stuff. Like, I mean, I was just doing it as a hobby when I had time, which I never had time. So it took me a long time. I started sending it out to agents and I got signed, which was, I mean, I couldn't believe it. It just was like, seriously. And then I ended up publishing that book and another one with Penguin, Random House. And
Wow.
From there, I ended up moving over to Kensington, and I've been with Kensington now for, oh my gosh, 6 years?
Quite a while.
Yeah, like how many series? 1, 2, 3, like I think 5 series. I just finished the 5th series and I've got a 6th one coming up with them. So it's one of those, stories where I just kind of, I guess what I would want somebody who's listening to this to take away from it is go ahead and just write that book because you just don't know what's going to happen. You don't know. You may end up getting everything you wanted, Yeah,
exactly.
It's never too late.
Where it's going to take you.
Right. Yeah. And as busy as you are, like if you really want it, you'll find a way to finish that book. I used to get up at 4 a.m. to write that book because it was the only time I could get a couple solid hours before the kids got up. So I was always exhausted, but I got the book done. So,
and I bet you when you closed that final page, you were like, "Oh, I have a really long bath."
I was like, I can't believe. Well, then the revisions started, right? But I was like, I had so much fun writing that book. It was the most illuminating experience. Like I learned a ton. And I loved doing it. I got so much joy out of writing it. And I still get a lot of joy out of writing. So it's definitely the place I'm where I'm meant to be. It's really the only time I've ever felt like I'm completely doing the thing I'm meant to be doing. And so, just go ahead and do it. Like find the time, try to string together the time and do it. Because
and that's what's really important about writing. I always say it's a calling, and everyone goes, "You sure you want to call it a calling?" But it is. It's a lifestyle. It's a decision you have to make, and you have to throw yourself completely into it to make it work.
And you have to.
Has there been a book that you wish you'd never picked up, and why?
That's interesting. I saw that question and I was like, I just really thought about it. Was there a book I read that I didn't want to, that I wished I hadn't? And there's been like a bunch of books I've read that I didn't like and books that I read that weren't what I thought they were going to be.
I've done that too.
Right. Or books that I've read that drove me crazy, like not necessarily in a bad way, but just for whatever reason drove me crazy. But I don't think I've ever read a book that I can say, I just wish I hadn't read it. Because you always get something out of it, even if you don't enjoy it, even if you don't think the book is a good book, I still will get something from it. Even just some little piece. So I don't regret anything I've read, really. But I've gone crazy over some stuff. So
no, I was going to say, I don't have one that I regret. Mm-hmm. I have ones that have driven me crazy because they are not what I thought they were going to be.
Right.
Or I feel completely misled because I've gone back and I've reread the blurb and I'm like, that's not what I thought I was picking up.
It was going to be. Yep.
Yeah. And I laugh because most people, when they experience Marie's World for the first time, they go, this was so not what we thought it was going to be.
But if it's in a good way, that's okay.
It
right?
was, yeah. Except for my dear old friend who comes from wrestling and has a tendency to tell me my plot holes.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Those are awkward conversations. I hate it when he says, I've read such and such. And I'll be like, no.
Yeah, I know.
So when you do your Now, I always see darker characters, so I'm going to clarify this because some
Right.
people have always asked me, especially when it comes to romance writers.
Hmm.
What I mean by darker characters is the ones that cause trouble, right?
Hmm. Right.
The external force that's keeping
Right.
your couples apart,
Right.
standing in the way in some shape or
That's a
form.
good way of putting it, especially when you're talking about romance.
Yeah,
I,
but
you
I was
know,
like, I struggled with that question because I'm like, how do you word that question?
I
Um,
actually, yeah, I like that question.
yeah.
Um, the reason I like that question is because I think that line between a hero and a villain or a heroine and a villain is a really thin, thin, thin
Oh,
line.
it is
Yeah, and
very, very
so
thin.
you could tip that thing either way. And so I've had heroes who were the antagonist at the same time as they were the hero.
Yep.
Especially in Lady Eleanor's Seventh Suitor, that hero, and I've had a lot of readers tell me that hero drove them crazy because he's doing a bad thing, And
Yeah.
when we first start out with him, he really is kind of the villain and the hero, sure, or he's the villain and he becomes the hero.
Yeah.
I like that kind of dynamic because I don't think people are usually one thing or another. Like,
Yeah.
we're all sort of, we have our good things and our bad things. And I
Hmm.
also think that people who have wounds, which was the case with Cam from Lady Eleanor's Seventh Suitor, he has bad things that happen to him. And sometimes the bad things that happen to you make you not behave always
Nice.
in a way that's the right way to behave, and so you kind of have to learn.
Yeah.
um and so he learns in that book, and so he's like the prime example I would think of as a character that's dark and light at the same time, or starts out dark and
I mean,
becomes.
I kind of laughed to myself because I wrote Harold based off of a friend who
Uh-huh.
inspired this character because he's got a dark sense of humor,
Uh-huh.
and he's had one of those really challenging lives, but
Yeah.
yet really interesting lives.
Right. Right.
And I knew a lot about him because I was his fan growing up, and he
Hmm.
inspired the character.
Right.
But Harold took a huge, um, sort of, I would say, life of his own.
Yeah.
And he started off this dark, greedy,
Hmm.
selfish person that
Right.
I drove myself crazy writing, never mind what the
Right. I
readers
know,
were
right? They
reading.
get in your head.
I was
Yeah.
like, I want to get in this book and slap you.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the more it's gone on and the more that you see him and the more you see that he loves this girl that just is
Hmm.
not going to love him back,
Right.
you kind of almost feel for him in a
Right.
way
Right.
because she has been in love with his brother. She's
Ah.
tried to move on from him with
Uh-huh.
other people, and he's so desperately clinging to her, and yet
Yeah.
he married her to get back at her father.
Oh
So
boy.
she was a scheme. She
That's
was a
not
whole
good.
plan of revenge,
Uh-huh.
which backfired on him because he fell in love with this girl.
Right. See,
And
I love that kind of twisted, like gets all
yeah,
tangled up. I like that
yeah. And
tangled up
that's,
storyline.
he has such a dark soul to him that everyone's like, we can't wait to you to, because every character in my series has their own book,
Mm.
and his is coming up, and everyone's
Ah,
like, we can't wait for
what's
it to come out.
gonna happen? Yeah.
Yeah, they're like, what is up with Harold? Like, Harold has a meltdown in book three, and everyone's
Mhm.
like, oh my god, what's he gonna do? He's had a meltdown. He's sometimes a little bit like a toddler, you
Yeah.
know. You've taken
Yeah.
away his favorite toy, and he will
Right.
stamp and stomp and cry and throw things and do all
Right.
that stuff because he's such a sensitive guy on the inside.
Right. Right.
And that's where everyone's excited to see,
Yeah.
is he, what's he gonna do
How's
when
he
he
gonna, and
gets
how
to
are
that
you as the
point?
writer gonna redeem him, right? Because that's a trick for a writer, for you make the character, especially if it's the hero, he has
Yeah.
issues, and he's not so likable, but he's still the hero. And so at some level, you have to figure out a way to make the reader love him. It's hard. It's not, that's a good
He,
exercise for a writer to do that. It's hard to do that.
yeah, and
But,
he's been a challenge, I can tell
yeah,
you.
yeah, I bet.
I wrote him out in a notebook. In fact, it was one of these really big white notebooks.
Yeah.
And I filled it, and then I started a second one. And I was like, okay, this is getting lunacy now. I just should be typing this on a computer because what am I doing?
Right.
But Harold just went from being this, what I was hoping he would be, was this fluctuating villain, to now being the center focus of what the romance for one of the twin daughters is going to be.
Yeah, see? He
And
got under your skin and
he
yeah.
did.
Yeah.
Oh, he did.
That's how that happens.
And his brother is not giving up without a fight either. And I thought, this is going to be the hardest series I'll ever write, is when I get to that book.
You're probably going to have a great time, though. I mean,
I mean,
series are, yeah.
And the great thing is, they're twin sisters who turned on each other, right? So,
oh boy,
my hair is already sticking up, right?
Because the stress is just
hero.
Yeah, it's the
yeah.
hero.
So you've got twin sisters that are fighting. You got a father and daughter that are trying to kill each other sometimes.
Oh boy,
right?
Family dynamics.
Yeah. So you've got one that's, if you say boo to her, she kind of crumbles. Yeah. And then you've got the fact she's published her twins' diaries to the world.
Oh my.
And then you've got Marie. Yeah, and then you've got Marie, who's the hothead, and she suddenly does a 180 and she runs away. And now everyone's like, wait, who is this person?
Right.
Like, she's hiding out in Scotland. She doesn't want to know. And then she gets brought back into the place that she ran from. She ran from wrestling. She used dance as her way to make herself famous so she wouldn't have to be involved in wrestling. But she's got to go back to wrestling because her twin sister has signed with the company.
Right.
The company is owned by her husband, her estranged husband. So she, whether she wants to be in bed with him or not, is got to go back.
Right.
And she's got to deal with the mess that she left behind.
Yeah.
So the two are kind of like running at the same time, but in two different directions on two different roads. And for me, I've got the lucky trick of I've got journal entries.
Yeah.
So when I get stuck, I can jump to journals.
See, that's nice. Yeah, that's a nice.
But that was a nice trick, and that was a writing teacher that whispered that to me. She's like, she was doing a class in Shetland, and she said the first thing she ever learned to do was write a journal.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself when I was stuck with these twins, and how was I going to keep the story for the two of them going constantly? How was I going to do that? And I went,
right.
She's published her sister's diaries, so why don't we put the diaries in the book?
Yeah, definitely. Right.
And honestly, my writing partner thought I was insane. Because you have to almost change your voice as a writer. You go into the journal entries.
Right. They're only writing for themselves, which changes everything. Yeah.
And I just like pulled, I thought I was going to pull my hair out with it, but it actually saved my sanity.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was my experience. Kind of, and I think from that, I think I've got a semi-good idea or platform to be able to go into Mills and Boon. At least I hope I do.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing with every book, you get something out of it that you take into to the next thing. So, or you learn
and
something.
also I've learned I can write a very long series and get away with it.
And keep it going. Yeah. Yeah.
So what inspired you initially? I mean, I know you talked about entering the romance world. because you were tired of your teaching job. But was there an author that maybe inspired romance as your choice of genre, or?
Yeah. Well, I always was a big reader of classic, 18th, 19th century, mostly female novelists, so
Yeah.
Jane Austen, yes, but also earlier, Anne Radcliffe, Fanny Burney, Sarah Fielding. Like I always was a total 18th, 19th century literature nerd. Loved that stuff. I read tons of it. And I always loved romance too. And so I kind of came by it, like, honestly, in the sense that if you read a lot of it, you tend in that direction. But the one writer I always credit with really pushing me over the edge into trying romance is Julianne Long, which I'm sure I don't know Julianne Long at all. I'm sure she's sick of me mentioning her in interviews, but the truth is,
she's probably well honored.
I read her. Oh gosh, now I can't think of it's ridiculous that I can't think of the series because Pennyroyal Green series. And it has a lot of there are quite a few books. There's something like 8 or 9 books. And it just blew me away. I thought she was so good. She's such a great writer. The characters were so engaging and it really inspired me. And I was like, if I could I just got so much out of reading them. And I got so much enjoyment out of that series that it really kind of tipped me over into, maybe I really should just give this another try and try to do it. And so, next thing we know, we have the Sutherlands and it's actually happening. So I always like to shout her out because she's still amazing and she's still writing historical romance and she's done she did a bunch, like 2 or 3 contemporaries too, which were also really good. She's just a wonderful writer. So, yeah.
So when you're writing, is it like a movie or is it like a jigsaw puzzle for you?
It's like a jigsaw puzzle. I wish it was like a movie. I wish it was all so nice and smooth and thought out and came to me like that. Like I might get sections of it that are like a movie, like scenes or something, but for the most part, I have to kind of try to sort it out as I'm writing it. I usually have a long series of, like, I'll be writing the book and then I also will be keeping notes on everything I'm writing that, like, different ideas as I'm going, things I want to change, stuff like that.
So. Oh, I do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I break it down chapter by chapter.
Yeah, me too.
And then I write notes as I'm writing that chapter, like, so and so's mom's called blah blah blah. Yeah, so I don't forget it later.
Right, exactly. Because the things I always am like,
or the dog's name.
Oh, I'll totally forget it. Yeah, or don't forget. Right, don't forget that in chapter 2, this thing has to happen. Like they have to have this, like, literally 2-line discussion about this thing. It has to happen here, and it's because you will. I totally will forget if I don't write it down.
And that's what I had to do because. The lucky thing for me was Marie's World just flowed.
Yeah.
So I actually was able to plan the 32 book series that we wanted to do out chapter by chapter, notebook by notebook. Wow. Kind of regret those calls, to be honest, because they were so long. But that was what it was like for me. Like I just continually kept notes and I'd be like, okay, what threads do we have in book 2 that I have to pull over to book 3?
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I'd have to make notes, right? Okay, what's Layla doing right now that maybe she shouldn't be doing?
Right.
Or what's this new half-sister doing that she shouldn't be doing?
Right, and how can I use it somewhere else? Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, because sometimes it was like, I always got told, gosh, Chrissy, you've got a lot of meat on all your bones, which basically meant there was so much going on in my books.
There's a lot going on, yeah.
Yeah, and all my characters were connected somehow. And editors would sit for a really long time. In fact, one editor sat with a whiteboard in front of her, and every time there was a kind of, what she would call a good introduction to a character, she'd write their name on the board.
Yeah.
And I think she came back and she said, you realize you have something in the regions of 12 characters that floats in and out of your books.
That's amazing, because that's a lot to handle in one.
I never realized I had that many characters.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I was clueless.
Well, it's just a natural progression, So
yeah, because everybody's got a best friend.
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So if you're thinking of the main characters as Layla and Marie,
Mm-hmm.
and then they have love romances. So
Yeah.
that's Will and Edward for
Yeah.
Layla, and then Purslin and Harold for Marie.
Uh-huh.
But then they all have friends.
Right.
So it was almost like a ripple effect,
Yeah.
And that's what I was like. I ended up explaining to this publisher, I'm like, this could probably be a series that would never end
Right. Right.
because I'm terrible. I'm terrified of the final page.
Yeah, I know.
I can't do
We
the
miss
final.
them when
I
they're gone.
No, it's not that. Like, I get to the point where I'm like, okay, I have to write the final chapter. And Ian
Mm-hmm.
goes, oh, this will take a month because you do
Mm.
not like closing a book. It's
Closing
the
a book is
truth. I
hard.
hate it. It
It's
is.
hard.
It's so hard.
Yeah.
So I will fight it. I will put it off.
Mm.
I will work on other things.
Yeah. I have that
I
issue.
am terrible. And then when I do, I go away and I lock myself in the bathroom with a book of an author that I find
Mm-hmm.
comforting, and I
Mm-hmm.
have a cry because
Aw.
I just,
You're like, I
it's like
gotta
a
do this,
piece
but
of me is left, and I'm
I
like,
know.
and the
Yeah.
weird thing that I kind of explain to my readers is once that story is written down, it vanishes from my universe.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't go back there to
No.
relive it or replay the movie. I have
Mm-hmm.
to read the book because it's the only way I can remember it.
Right.
And which is really terrible if you're on on an interview and somebody brings up a really old book of yours and you're like,
Oh, where you're like, wait,
white
what?
noise.
That's
Yeah,
happened to
like,
me. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
white noise, just
I'm like, why can't
nothing
I
there. And I'm
remember
like,
this? Yeah.
so I have to always admit to them, I'm like, I'm really sorry. I've forgotten that book. And the
Mhm.
reason being is once it's written, it's deleted from my brain.
Well, you got to get some of that stuff out of there, right? Because it's like you got to
Yeah,
keep moving forward. So, yeah.
you have to. And I think writing is a lot about, yes, your life experiences and therapy,
Mm-hmm.
but it's also about continually moving forward and having
Well,
a
yeah.
goal to reach at the
Right.
end of every step.
Right.
And I like that because when you've got arthritis as bad as me,
Mm.
I got brought up to be very driven.
Uh-huh.
So, like, my first thing was my first real kind of test was I was 4 and they
Uh,
said she's never going to walk again to my
oh
mom.
my God.
And I was a fiery 4-year-old who
Mm-hmm.
probably had more swear words than she had English, which is never good. Can I just say, if you're going to leave your kids with the grandparents, explain to the grandparents not to swear continuously around the kids because that's what they
Oh,
pick
right.
up,
Because they pick it up.
right?
Yep.
And I literally managed to say, I will show you.
And I'm
And I
right.
did.
And you did. I
And
love
I've learned to rewalk at least 12 times I can think of in my life.
God, that's amazing.
And every time they said she can't do something, Ian just sighs now and he puts his head in his hands because he knows
You're gonna
that
do it.
Crystal's going to take that as a personal challenge. And she's
But
going to
that's
come back
good.
and she's going to sit in front of them and she's going to say, see, I did it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I have to believe that they think that I can't do it.
Right.
Otherwise,
Right.
it doesn't quite work.
Doesn't.
But yeah, I mean, I grew up with the constant, we don't know if Crystal can have a normal life, and we don't know if Crystal, can survive education. They were talking about pulling me out of education, and I said no to it all. And
Yeah.
I actually managed to have a mainstream education,
Yeah. That's
which
good. Yeah.
surprises so many people. But even with the dyslexia, because you got to mind, I was doing this and dyslexia on top of it.
Yeah.
But I did.
That's the struggle.
And
It's hard. Yeah.
And I graduated high school. I was so proud of myself. I graduated high school and I said, right, I'm never fucking doing college again. I tried to go
You
for
are. You just said
midwifery.
you were, though. You told me didn't you say you're at university?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I'm 33 and I'm like, gosh darn it, I gotta go back to school
Well,
because I need a
everything, it's
BA honors.
never too late.
Yep. And so last year, oh no, it's 2 years ago now. I sat down and I said, I'll go back to Open University because my mom, she's got an HND and my dad's got HNDs and
Mhm.
my brother is an HND and he's at university.
Mhm.
And I thought, well, gosh, I can't be the only person at the table that doesn't have an HND on my side of the family because,
Right.
and it was almost like a motivation. However, when I went back to university, so did my mom, and she's
Oh,
in her 50s.
well, good for her, though. That's amazing.
Yeah, and so
Yeah.
she's doing open university too. And I'm doing an open degree because I'm so indecisive. I started off in early learning children's, and then I
Uh-huh.
got told I wouldn't be able to work in a nursery, and I was absolutely
Mhm.
gutted.
Mhm.
And I decided I'll go into literature and writing,
Yeah.
um, mainly because I thought I could pass the course,
Yeah. I'm
which
sure.
sounds so sad, but yeah. And then so that's what I'm doing now. But it was it's I think being a writer is so rewarding,
Hmm.
but you have to kind of you learn that
Keep
dedication
right.
and really
It's not
work
for
with it.
everybody because
No,
yeah, it's a lot. It's really different than people think it is. I guess is how I
yeah,
would put it. Yeah,
it is so much time in front of the computer to the
it is
point
so
I
much
think my
time.
family thinks I'm antisocial, but I'm really not.
Yeah, I
And
get a
then of
lot. I
course
get
I
that
would,
sometimes.
and then of course I turn around and say, "Oh yeah, I started a podcast." And they were like, "Yeah, we're gonna see even less of you then." Pretty
uh,
much.
but it's like it's weird that those characters and stuff. It's like to you, it doesn't feel like isolation because they're very real. Like sometimes I'm like, I guess I'll ask myself if is the stuff going on in my head actually feel more real to me than what's actually going on? And there are times when
Yep.
not most of the time, but there's times when I'll be so involved in it. I really want to be doing that's really the only thing I want to be doing. So
I've actually had an occasion where I've turned around and I've asked my hubby, my
mhm.
partner, a question that was going through my head that the girl that was leading the role of my book was asking the man who's in
Oh
love with.
yeah. Where you're so right, there's the line gets blurry.
Yep.
Yeah.
And of course, I was sort of just waking up, and I had been in the world, and I was exploring it, and I was
Mhm.
gathering, the inspiration up. And I turned to him and I went, "You've got the most stunning blue eyes.
Sweet.
Can I see you naked?" And
What
he
did
was
he
just
do?
like, uh, "When we go to bed."
And you're like, wait a
Just
minute,
that
who are you?
kind of awkward. And he knew that I had been elsewhere and I
Yeah.
had just come back, kind of thing. And he kind
Right.
of laughed it off and he went, he says, "You really are a band pot." Which means that, I'm a mad hatter or I'm a little
Oh,
crazy.
wow. Hey, there's
Or,
worse things.
yeah, or he catches me walking around the house and I'm muttering to myself and I'm actually running the dialogue.
Oh, I do
You
that
ever
too.
done that? Yeah,
Yes, absolutely. And
running
then
the
I think
dialogue.
if anybody was watching me right now, they would think I was crazy. Yeah.
Oh no, the nurses in the hospital really do think I am crazy. It's
Oh, they just
So
don't
which
get it.
character would you say has stayed with you the most or for the longest period of time?
Wow, that's a hard one because they all, in one way or another, stay with me.
Or the one that tends to like creep into your book and say, "Hey, you're not done with me yet."
Yeah, there's a couple like that. I think the one character right now that I really want to write, whose book hasn't happened yet, and it was because I wasn't going to write her book. I didn't
Okay.
intend to, but then people started asking for her, and I was like, oh, how could I do that? I can't figure out a way to write that book because it would have to be a prequel book. Like
Yeah.
it's Lady Amanda Clifford from the Swooning Virgin series. I would have to like,
Okay.
so that book is five books long now, and I would have to go back and write hers to be the first one. And I've never done
Yeah.
that before, where I've already actually written the entire series and then gone back and written the first book. And so I kind of was like, I'm not going to
I
do it.
wrote the first 3 and then did that. So yeah,
Really?
I feel
I
your
think
pain. Yeah.
it's a
Feel
whole
your
other
pain on that one.
way of approaching it. And so I was kind of hesitant and reluctant. And then the publisher actually wants that book too. And I was like,
Yeah.
wow, maybe I really should write this book. And so I've been thinking way more, because her story is definitely not done. Hasn't even really been touched on, because she's kind of a mysterious character. So she'd be the one right now that I would like to figure out a way to get her story out. We'll see.
I bet you she's the most annoying too. She's just like,
she's very she's very confident and very she's unflappable, like completely calm, completely in control of herself, completely in control of everything. She's kind of a different character for me, actually. Maybe that's another reason why I want to write her, because I don't think I've written a character like her before.
yeah, and
So we'll
sometimes
see.
it's actually a good adventure. Like I found that, when I did Charlie's, that was exactly what it was like for me. Like I wasn't expecting to learn about fatherhood while writing, because obviously if you're a mom, you're a mom, right?
Right.
So it's very difficult for a woman to kind of step into a man's shoes, just as it's very difficult for a man sometimes to step into a woman's shoes.
Right.
And I had to almost step into Joe's head to write it.
Right.
And I learned so much by doing it that I'm so grateful I gave Charlie his book.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I left it open so that we could go back and have more Charlie if we wanted.
That's good. Yeah.
But yeah, it and especially since it was a prequel, so all little Layla, it was like not a grown up Layla, and it wasn't a grown up Marie. So you're really starting with the character traits coming in that's going to follow them into the series.
Right.
And I thought, this is nuts.
You thought I've already written these characters.
Doing? And then I was angry at him for I think a week, because I'm like, why did I let him talk me into this? Because it was totally him pitched that one. And it was totally him that was like, we should write Charlie's book and give Charlie a voice and Charlie's opinion on this. He was very pro Charlie. He had a soft spot because he's got twin sons. And it was funny because the series, I think, changed a little bit of what Joe thought about raising his kids around wrestling.
Yeah. Oh, I believe it.
So it really opened his mind. And in a way where he's like, my boys are going to know that I'm a wrestler. They're going to know what their dad does. I'm going to take them into the show and show them. And I think he had almost like an epiphany while writing it. Whereas I gained a lot of gray hair.
Yeah, I get that with every book.
yeah, you do, because you're like, it's like going through pregnancy with them.
It really is, actually. It's strangely that way.
And then you have the pain of waiting for it to be published, and the fear of it being published
anymore, right? Like once it hits the market, it doesn't belong to you anymore. It belongs to the reader, and that's a weird feeling too. That feeling of, wow, I really don't own these characters anymore. Now they belong to other people, and which is the way it is supposed to be, and it's the way it should be, and it's the way I want it. But it's also weird, It
is weird. It's so weird. Is there a character that you've written or that you want to write that's maybe sitting in a notebook that we don't know anything about, but you would love to sit down and write, but you just haven't had the time to?
There's a lot of characters like that. I actually I'm like you, I have a bunch of notebooks and files on my computer of just ideas. Sometimes they're ideas about plots. Sometimes they're just like a concept, like what if I wrote this, and sometimes they're a character. And I don't have some of them aren't even romance. Some of them are not historical romance. And so I have all these ideas in my head about things I'd like to do that I don't know when I'm ever going to get to do them.
I know that feeling.
Right? Because it's like, I'm I'm held in by contracts right now. So I'm writing the things that I'm contracted for, and I don't really have time to write anything else. So yeah, I mean, I guess I think about it as a future thing. I think about these characters that are kind of gathering dust, as something I
Yeah.
might do in the future. I just, I don't know how that will look or when that will happen, I guess. So yes, but it's all a big blurry area.
Area, yes. Have
Yeah,
there been any techniques that you found helpful or ones that you wish you hadn't tried?
that's such a great question. The one I wish I hadn't tried is pantsing. You guys, you know what I mean by that.
Mm-hmm.
Writing
Mm-hmm.
without any kind of outline, which I know so many writers who swear by it. That does not work for me.
Nope.
I'm way too much of a control freak. Like I have to know how it's going to play out, and otherwise I just end up with a mess. Like that just doesn't work for me. Everybody's different, right? So
I tried it for a year
yeah.
and
How
I
did
was like, I had a nervous breakdown with it. I seriously did. I came out with hives from my ankles to above my
no.
knees,
Oh, that's terrible. Oh,
and no one could work out why, and I
gosh, are you
couldn't even
so
work out
stressed out?
why, right? And then I I couldn't type because I was so itchy. Like it was
Mm,
like chicken pox itchy.
yeah. Ugh.
And Ian was like, "Well, why don't you write in a notebook when we're in bed? And then that way you are writing, but
Mhm.
you can make small notes
Right.
on a story outline."
That makes sense.
Well,
Yeah.
if it was not for his suggestion, I might
You still
still
have.
be having hives.
Oh gosh, that's yeah.
Because within like a week, the hives were gone. I
Oh,
was
thank
back
God.
writing.
Yeah.
I was driving him crazy,
Well, back to usual, right? Back to normal.
which was back to usual. And then he would be like, "Okay, do you want to leave the house sometime this month?" And I'd be like,
Really?
"Sure, why not?" Because it was a motorcycle, it was our
Uh,
transportation back then. So
uh,
it was like every time, and I can't ride in a motorcycle. So I used to almost dread going out on it, but
uh-huh.
also I loved the thrill of it at the same
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
So that was like a technique I wish I'd never
Yeah.
tried.
Which I
Like,
should have, yeah, like I feel like I should have known that wouldn't work for me because I know myself well enough to know that I'm not
yeah,
really a fly by the seat of your pants type of person. And so, but hey, more power to the people it works for, right? There's no right way to do it. Everybody has their way. Um,
exactly,
the
exactly.
thing that I have been working with is a technique I think has been really useful is really studying and working with deep point of view or close third person point of view, which is
Yeah,
not the easiest thing to learn how to do.
no.
There's a real learning curve there, but once you get it, it changes everything. I feel like it totally takes your writing to a different level. At least for me, maybe because I tend to be my books are more character driven than plot driven. So
I'm character driven too,
yeah.
so I understand
So
that.
that deep
Yeah.
point of view thing taking me a while to get it down, but it's
I
changing
mean,
everything.
it is hard.
Yeah.
I got told I got it down when I released The Aftermath, which
Hmm.
is Marie World 2.
Yeah.
And for me, it was, I realized I had to be able to answer the question of why.
Yeah.
Now, if you've got somebody who's a friend, like my male friend, who says why to everything, like you say her favorite flower is, you know, a pink rose.
Hmm.
Well, he would say, well, why?
Right.
Why of all the flowers is that her favorite?
Why is it
And you
that?
had to be able to answer him, right?
Yeah.
That's the kind of way that I mean, I had to learn it for wrestling because I
Hmm.
was a wrestling writer. I wrote wrestling for a while. So I had to be able to sit down with a wrestler who
Right.
owned his own character, and I was just writing that for that
Right.
character.
Right.
And I would have to be able to explain the story to them in a logical sense,
Right.
but I'd also have to be able to tell him why. Well,
Wow.
why do I win this match? Or why do
Right.
I want this match? Or why this opponent? Why this night?
Right.
And trust me, they are control freaks, every one of them.
Oh,
And
yeah.
they all want to know why. And they
Right.
always have a lot of whys, right?
Yeah.
So that made learning deep point of view easy because I already had that structure of in my brain as I
Right.
write. I do have him in my mind going, well, why, Crystal? Tell
Yeah.
me why.
Yeah.
And
So it gets you
knowing
in there
that
deeper.
yeah, and
Yeah.
then knowing an off cuff answer is not going to cut it.
Right.
So
Right.
I built that kind of layered system in to make them 3D. Like Layla's got a bad side. She's got a really, really good side, but she's got a
Right.
really, really bad side.
Like most people.
Marie,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and Marie, you see mostly the bad, but she has that really soft, loyal side
Right.
where she would do anything for her family and her
Right.
friends. And, she would, I think if she was to do something really stupid, it would be because she's doing it for somebody.
Mhm.
And that was where my journey of deep PV came in.
Yeah.
What I struggled with was the Mills and Boon writing technique itself
Hmm.
is vastly different to how I write because I feel like you don't have enough space to
You don't. They're short.
cram it all
Right.
in.
Right. Yep.
And you're head hopping as well. So because
Interesting.
I noticed that a lot that, like particularly some of the ones that I read where you'll be following the female for a little bit and then the next like not even the next chapter, but the next paragraph, you're in with the male.
Oh, wow. Really?
And it's it's called head hopping.
Yeah.
And I had that drilled into me when I was in the Indies. Never head hop, never
Never
head
head
hop,
up.
never.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
But this time, like, I know it's something that they do as standard.
Right.
And going into Heartwarming, which is the one I've written this story for, I'm having to slow myself down, put in the details and in the little descriptions, but also keep telling myself, okay, well, what's Cole doing or what's Lorna doing now? And I'm
Yeah.
having to learn the head hopping. So it's
Yeah.
almost like a reverse from me to you because I've got the PV, the
Right.
deep personal experience of going into the characters' minds. My trouble is forgetting kind of like the
Yeah.
writing technique outside
Yeah. It
and
takes up a lot of
not
room to do deep point of views.
yeah,
So
and
it's,
not wanting to break up every character's point of view per
right.
chapter.
Right.
So it's almost like I'm trying to master the head
The
hopping
opposite.
technique.
Yeah. I mean,
I
deep point
really
of
hope I
view
get it.
it's my books are in deep point of view, but it's not as consistent as I like it to be. You know what I mean? There'll be an
Yeah,
occasional break out of it, and I'm like, okay, I want to get it more consistent.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, you know, live and learn.
You know what I mean by the head hopping.
I totally know what you mean by the head hopping. Yeah, and I mean we've all been told don't do that. So
Yeah.
um,
And then of course now when they're saying do it, it's like, huh?
it doesn't feel natural now, right? Like
No, it
probably
really
feels like
doesn't.
yeah. But you know, you look. I mean, that's the thing about writing, right? Like if I'm not trying to learn, if I'm not learning something new with every book, then what's the
What's the
point?
point
You
in
know,
doing
like
it?
it's you want to
Yep.
be always growing and trying new things, and yeah,
So we're now moving into the live end of the podcast.
okay,
Even though it's not really the end because, we talk a lot. Us authors like a good natter.
yeah.
So what is the first thing that you do to de-stress from editing and writing? So if you've had a long day in the office and now you just want to chill.
Yeah. Well, I still have kids at home. And so I have to kind of leave the office behind when they get back
Yeah.
from school. And I'll, I kind of just sort of come back into the real world where I'll listen to what they did at school, what's going on with them, cook with them, and my husband and stuff, and just sort of do the family thing. Because evenings are family.
Yeah.
And my kids are getting, I mean, my kids are 17 and 15. So they're getting to that age where they're, I don't have that much time, especially with my 17-year-old daughter. She's going to college. in a year. So that's really important that I get that time. And it does de-stress me. It takes my mind off writing. Because you get into that weird tunnel vision. Um,
Do you do? Yeah.
yeah, and I need to like be out of that. So it's
It's a lot
it's
of
good to be
mental
back in the
energy
real
as
world.
well.
What's
Yeah.
that?
It's a lot of
Yeah.
mental energy. I always say
Right.
it's a bit like running a marathon, except
Yeah.
for you're doing it every single day.
Right. It's
Um
exhausting. Yeah. There
yeah,
are
and
times. Right.
that's why it's so important for us to have those areas that we can go to
Right.
de-stress,
Right.
otherwise we just become slightly more insane writers.
Right.
So
Well, go
what
for walks
hobbies do
too and
you
stuff. You know.
well, yeah, true,
Yeah.
true. What hobbies do you enjoy, or the ones that you wish that you had more time to explore?
I was thinking about this question. I was like, hobbies, do I still have those? I don't feel like I ever since I started writing for professionally, I'm like, I don't really have any. I used to
Yeah,
do
you're like,
crafts and stuff like that, like paper
yeah,
crafts. I used to work with rare books, and so I got really interested in how to put a book together, like how to basically construct a book. And that kind of led me into like more paper crafts, like making my own cards or making, that kind of stuff. But
yeah,
gosh, it's ages because I just don't have time for it anymore.
yeah. It does. It
It's
takes a
what's
long
sad
time.
is I read. That's like my hobby is like it's terrible
Well,
because
that's a hobby. It's a good hobby to have.
I read everything and I read as much as I can and it really does de-stress me. So yeah, I'm kind of
I
bored.
would count that. I would count that, even
Yeah,
though.
that is a hobby. Yeah.
And I was just about to ask you if you were somebody that's into crafts or isn't,
I
and what.
was. I was for a while and I really enjoyed it. Like I probably enjoy going back to it too. It's just wow. I guess I feel like I who was it that some other writer said some famous writer said something about the only time I don't feel like I should be doing something else is when I'm writing. So I tend to write in my if I get extra time, which doesn't happen very often. I tend to
Yeah.
use it to write, which is I don't get away from writing enough, probably, I guess. Is fair to say.
It's weird because I think we all go through phases in our careers where we write constantly, and we
Right,
cannot feel like we're drawn away. And
right.
then we get to periods where we have to almost take that step back because we're close to
Absolutely.
burnout.
Right. And
And
don't you
that's
kind of go,
usually,
now what do I do? Like if I'm not spending all
yeah,
my time writing, I don't for it takes me a while to get back out of it and into something else, like of having nothing to do, you know?
yeah. And what I learned, and I was really lucky that I learned this, was my nan was such a stickler for I needed to knit. I needed to know how to knit
Oh
because I was
yeah.
a Shetland girl. So
Ah,
she was a professional knitter at the age of 8. So
oh
she
wow.
knitted jumpers and she sold jumpers, and that was how she supported her family. That was the extra income
That's
that kept them
amazing.
going. And she said to me and my cousin, she said, "You girls are a little bit more frail and a little bit more less sturdy, so you can't really go out and do, long jobs. So
Mhm.
I'm going to show you how to knit." So me and my cousin had a heart problem, and I had my health problems. And we learned to knit, and she realized I wasn't good with a sewing machine.
Yeah,
So she very rapidly stubbed me away from that.
right.
And instead, she taught me cross stitch and how
Oh,
to
that's really
make
cool. Yeah,
embroidery kind of stuff on pillowcases and make cushions, and
yeah.
all this kind of. I used to think of it as useless craft because I couldn't see how you could make money at it. And then I realized, now that I'm like in my 30s, I'm like, oh, she was teaching me this so that I would have a way to get out of my own head.
Right. And
You
she
know?
sounds amazing. I mean, she sounds like,
She was a great believer
yeah,
in if you were sitting down, your hands had to be doing
you should be doing
something.
something. Right. That
Because
makes a
she
lot of
could
sense.
not, yeah, she could not stand my dad had a horrible habit of chewing his nails.
Oh
And my
boy.
grandfather had a horrible habit of chewing his pipe, and it
Uh,
drove her mad. So she refused for her grandchildren to be the same. So if my brother was over, he was drawing and painting because that was his area.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it was, you're going to be a stitcher and you're going to knit. Now, I cannot crochet because crocheting is math and I can't do numbers.
Not a big math.
And I can't do sequences, which is also math, because of my dyslexia. But I could knit. And she made me sit and make hundreds of squares for blankets for the babies in hospital that were just born, because that's what they do in Shetland. When you have a kid, then they come through with a Shetland knitted blanket for your baby.
That's nice.
And usually with a hat and pair of gloves and booties. And it's kind of almost like, yay, you're a Shetlander, you were born here. So you're automatically one of us, whether you want to be or not. And trust me, I think the midwife was pretty sure I didn't want to be. I came out like a little monkey covered in hair. So, yeah, and I kind of laugh to myself now because my nan was really a huge driving force in having that tradition. A&E nurses who don't have a busy A&E in Shetland usually, actually spend the lulls sitting around with the doctors, teaching the trainee doctors that are coming onto the island for a year how to knit.
I love that. That's so cool.
And it's such an awesome thing to have.
Yeah.
Like, it totally, you can write and knit at the same time.
Right. Yeah.
Because you can, it makes you slow your brain down so you can think through your whole plot.
Right. No, I can see that.
And when the pandemic hit and the lockdown hit, and my mother was driving me crazy, and she wanted daughter time, which meant sitting and watching midwife shows, I sat and I would knit, and she and me would watch the shows. And secretly in my head, I really wasn't watching the show. I was writing the novel in my head.
Right.
She didn't know that. So it was a good way of living together for the first time in over a decade.
Everybody's happy.
Because we hadn't lived together. And I thought it was the best thing was to have those crafts, and I kept it going. Like, I am so disciplined, right? Okay, I've gone on, I've seen my friends this morning, I've had my cup of coffee, I've taken my medication, right? I'm now going to write.
Yeah.
And I will not force myself, but I'll say, right. Target for today is 1,000 words or 1,500 words. Right. I don't care how long it takes. We're sitting here till it's done.
That's exactly how I do it.
Yep. And then I can go watch wrestling and I can sew, and maybe something will come back to me and I'll write again. Right. Because I actually took the photograph from my wedding and I had it done by paint by numbers.
Oh, cool.
And I had it printed out, and then I painted it on a canvas.
Oh, neat.
And then I had it mounted, and that'll be on my wall forever. And I think to myself, it's good to have that time away so that
it is.
I get a fresh perspective. And my editor says you're not feeling like you're rushing so much.
Right.
It's like you've settled down and you're more in tune with what you're doing. And I thought, hallelujah, that was the key to me not pushing it so hard.
That's awesome. Maybe I should try knitting again.
Yeah,
my sister's really into knitting. Yeah. She's really good at it.
And it's so easy to do. I mean, you can literally do it and watch TV at the same time.
And,
or have a conversation with kids. And I always...
that seems soothing, like you said. Like a repetitive movement of your hands like that. Soothing.
And it's great for teenagers who are seriously stressed out their minds, too, by the way.
Oh my gosh.
I got a group of teenagers. Yeah. I got a group of teenagers. I was a youth club leader for 6 months. But I'd done it when I was a teenager. And I stupidly went back to it in my 30s thinking, teenagers can't have changed that much. I was about to learn that was not the case.
They're really different than I was.
Yeah. I was shocked.
Yeah.
And they are under so much pressure. And
They
this
are.
one girl, she was just howling her eyes out one night. And I looked at her and I said, "Do you know how to knit, hun?" And she goes, "Yeah, I do." I says, "Well, how about this? We're going to have a knitting night. I want you all to bring your needles and we'll just sit and knit. And you guys can
That's
talk about stuff that that's worrying you."
yeah.
And it is so funny that worked.
I
That
can
actually
imagine.
worked.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the girls were able to open up so that we had a girls' night of knitting, and then we did a night of diamond painting, and
Mm-hmm.
it was really good because in the school we did the diamond painting,
Mm.
and we were able to help a lot of the kids that we might have been concerned about. However, we were now more aware of their situation because we'd taken the time to sit and diamond paint with them.
Right. Right.
And, things like showing that an autistic child can actually sit and do cross stitch alone
Yeah.
with a sharp needle and a pair of scissors.
Right.
Obviously, I'm watching from the other side of the room to make sure
Right.
she's okay. But doing that just really shows that amazing abilities that these
Yeah.
kids also have.
Yeah.
And I think that gets underlooked a lot. So I could almost hear my nana being all proud in my head,
Oh, that's
going,
nice. Yeah.
look at the amazing stuff that you can do with this. So with me, I've got long-term health illness, and it makes me slow down and appreciate the day and go into the garden and smell well, at the moment it's daffodils that's up.
Yeah.
What's your thing that makes you slow down and appreciate the day?
You know, one of the things I do that I love is so we have a dog, a puppy, he's a one, and he needs a lot of
Oh, joy.
attention. What's that? He's a yeah. And he's a Newfoundland, so he's like one, but he's also 130 pounds. So when he wants something,
Ooh,
he needs to be dealt with. So
can't ignore them.
now what we do,
Yeah,
he and I, yeah, he gets me up. I get up really early and we go and I make my coffee and then he and I go out onto the porch. And this is a year-round thing, even in the winter, because I have a really good blanket for this. And we sit there
yeah,
for maybe 45 minutes and it's dark and then it gets lighter and lighter and lighter gradually and it's really super super quiet out there. Um, and it's just birds, just bird chirping. And this is how I start every day. Like literally, this happens every
wow,
day. And it's really, when it first started, Crystal, I was like, oh my God, this is so, I don't, it's 5:30, it's 35
yep,
degrees. Like, I don't want to do this. But then gradually, like he would be really calm out there. And then
yeah,
I would start to feel really calm out there as well. And now it's like I can't not do it. Now it's just part of the day. And it's a real necessity because we just go out there and he chills out and I chill out and we chill out together. He lies on top of my feet and we just sit there and listen to the birds. Like it's literally, we literally do nothing. And I think it's the
which is
only
good. Yeah,
time in the day where I literally just do nothing. And I don't really think about anything except listening to the birds and watching the sky. And, I really love, it's a good thing. Dogs are a good thing. They make you do things that
they
you
are.
wouldn't normally think about. So wouldn't think to do.
Yeah, and I mean, I grew up with a demented dog too. He really was. He was called Peppy, which we didn't name him that. That's the name he came with. And he got me through like my teens so much
Yeah.
because he was so good at just every night I went to bed, he would plant himself
Aw.
next to me. And
Aw.
he would start at my feet, and then by about an hour later, his head would be on my pillow, so we'd be sharing the
Aw.
pillow.
So cute.
And then he'd be under the duvet because he'd get cold, and he would lick
Aw.
me to tell me he was cold. And then he would get too warm, so then he would sort of make his way round me to who's behind me,
Right.
and then he would stick his paws into my back and stretch
Aw.
to the point where I was on the teeniest edge of the bed.
Liver bed. Yeah.
But
The
he
things
would
you do.
have the fan. He would have enough of the fan that he wasn't cold,
Mhm.
and enough of the duvet that he wasn't too warm,
Mhm.
and he was quite happy.
Oh, that's funny.
And then 8 a.m. would hit,
Yeah.
and I would have to get up whether I wanted to or not. As soon
Uh-huh.
as my dad's alarms radio music came on,
Uh-huh.
he would lick my ears.
Oh, it's like you're up. You're getting up.
Yep. And
Yeah.
I got cats, right?
We have
Thinking
cats
cats are
too.
not so hard, they're easy. No, they're not. They're a
They're not
whole
that
other
easy
kind of
either. Ours are
no, they're a
pretty
whole
demanding.
other kind of furry hell.
The only way that
So
ours are easy is they're like 13 pounds, not 130. So it's easy.
yeah,
Yeah.
my horse was 130, and he acted like a dog, and I thought, holy cow! It was, but he did the most embarrassing thing to me. He sat on a police car
Oh no. Really?
and killed the engine.
Are you serious? What
Mm-hmm.
happened? Did you get in trouble?
No, though they said that because we were not near the animals at the time, we couldn't be held responsible for
Oh
him.
my gosh.
Just as he's about to leave, said Polis, my lovely horse, who I wanted to strangle, lifted his leg and peed on him,
Oh
just like
man.
a dog would.
Oh my god. That's so embarrassing. Ugh.
I was so red.
Oh.
Honestly, I was bright beetroot red. And yeah, so I
They've
learned
probably
from
seen
that.
worse. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the
They
things we
have
do for
probably.
our pets. Yeah.
And they were from South, so they were not islanders, and I think they were thinking, okay, this is probably just the hazards of being a
Yeah.
country police officer or whatever. I was relieved because I didn't want like a 70 odd fine,
Oh, right.
because that's what it is if they damage, if they
Yeesh.
actually knew the law, then they would know that that's the damage we have to pay.
Oh man.
But no, it was good, and every animal I've had, whether it's my youngest Stefano or Bob or my dog or my horse,
Mhm.
over the years, like, 'cause I mean, I've had animals around me my entire life. They have
Yeah.
really had a positive impact
Yeah.
on me.
Yeah.
Except for I know that when I go through to my bed, I'm going to have to fight my kitten for my space.
Yeah, I have to
But
fight my cats too. Yeah.
yeah, do you not think that they lie just exactly where
They
you
do.
would?
They do it on purpose, I swear.
Yeah, and it's because it's where most of our scent is. So they
Oh,
lie on the scent because they're searching for our scent because it gives them comfort to
which
sleep.
is sweet actually, but I'm like, I need to stretch my legs.
Yeah, or you're like, oh, my hubby's the worst because they've bonded to him now.
Uh-huh.
He sleeps with his legs in an A shape
Oh, okay.
because he's got the duvet as a tent for one of them.
Oh my
And
god.
that guy sleeps under his legs,
Oh
pressed
my
against him.
god. That is
And then his feet have to be X apart because, yeah, I know, because the kitten, the youngest one, likes to have his head on one foot and then stretch out and have his bum on the other.
That's really cute though, but yeah, I know what you're saying.
Yeah. 3
Yeah.
hours, 4 hours later, and he's like,
I
oh.
need to move. I know.
So I have to kind of, usually I chase them out and be like, okay, go on, get out of here. I
Yeah.
close the door, and then 10 minutes later, all I hear is the doorknob rattling.
Yeah.
And
They don't give up.
no, and it's Mama,
I
I want in,
know.
kind of thing.
Mm.
And because my oldest one, he wasn't around cats from a young age, so
Mhm.
he mimics words like
Oh,
a parrot.
really? That's funny.
So he learned the word mama
Oh
and I
god.
love you.
Oh.
So
See,
that's
you're
what I
doomed
wake up
at
to
that
every
point.
morning.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm terrible. I'm such a I'm horribly easy to get out
Oh,
of
I am
bed
too.
to let him in. So as soon as he goes, Mama, I love you, that's me. I'm like, oh fuck, I
You're
gotta
like,
get
I
up.
gotta let him back in. I miss mommy.
Yeah, basically. But when I moved to Shetland, my hubby had to stay behind for a month
Yeah.
because we had a month lease that we had to see out, and I had to get to my job, and they were super protective of me because they didn't know my mum and dad.
Right.
So I slept in a room down the stairs from them, and my oldest slept behind my legs and he kept his head to the door.
Mhm.
My youngest, because it was such a new house for him, he was right in at my chest and he had to sleep with his nose touching mine.
Right.
God forbid if I moved,
Oh, God.
because the claws would come and they would head on to my pajamas for dear
Oh,
life. So I
gosh.
was like, oh, okay. And I thought, well, I don't know how Ian's getting his side of the bed back, but
Mhm.
okay.
I know. He's going to have to share when he gets back.
He did. He had to fight them for like a
Oh, man.
month, you know.
Wow.
But that's why I love animals, because
I do too.
without them, I think our lives would be very boring.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
So, to finish us off, what is your favorite place to curl up in the day? Like
Well,
to
either on
go,
the
like a
porch.
cafe? Oh,
No,
your
I'm not a
porch,
big
yeah.
cafe. No, I'm not a big. Well, I guess I used to be before COVID, but less so now.
Yeah, I'm
I
kind
tend
of
to
in the
go to
same
the
boat.
porch still with the dog or without him, or in the family room in front of the fire. I'm definitely a big sit
Oh,
in front of the fire person. So
I love that too.
yeah.
We don't have a fire in our new home, but in my parents, they had this beautiful log burning fire, and some
Oh,
nights I would just write for
it's so
hours on
nice.
end,
Yeah,
you know.
totally.
And
I
I would
love
get up at 6 a.m. because I knew I would get 2 hours before my parents would be
Mhm.
up.
Right.
And I would light the fire and I would make the cups up ready for them to have their morning tea and coffee. And then I would take my coffee through and I would just write. Because
Yeah.
I always got the phone call at 8 to tell me what school I was going to.
Right.
So I would sit and I would write for those 2 hours. And that was how I had to get round to my mom, of all people.
Yeah.
Um, and then when Ian moved up, it was a little bit like a breathing space because their whole attention went onto him.
Right.
And I was like, I'll sneak through to the room for a couple hours of writing. And then he would sneak through. And it was like, no, the whole point of this is I'm supposed to be in here
You
writing.
go entertain them and I'll yeah.
Yeah, like it was my plan. And he totally ruined it.
Yeah.
So this is the quick part of our show is we're going to do word association.
Okay.
Because we originally did this as word associations with novels, but
Right.
people are finding it too hard.
Well, yeah.
So I thought we'll just do word association. It'll be easier for people.
Okay.
And I gave you actually a theme because when
You
I looked you up, I was like,
you did give
I
me a
got a
theme.
very, very good vibe off you. And I was like,
Aw.
she'll figure this out as she reads the words that there was a theme going.
I did except for one word. And that was the word truffles. I was like, wait, how does that fit into this? Because
English truffles are usually served at polo matches in England.
really? Okay, I didn't know that.
Yes.
I
Yes.
wasn't sure if you meant mushrooms or if you meant chocolate.
Oh
Because
no,
there's
it's both. It's both
okay.
in here. So it's weird.
I
Being
had no
somebody that
idea.
lived around horses, I know quite a bit about that.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we're gonna get started and see where this takes us.
Okay.
So the first word, as you said, is truffles.
And I'm supposed to say what I think of.
Yeah, your first thing you think of.
Unfortunately, the first thing I think of is mushrooms, and I don't like mushrooms, which is
Well, at
terrible.
least you're honest.
I
You know.
know, yeah, maybe that's why I couldn't. That one stood out to me. I was like, what do I think of when I think of this? I do like chocolate truffles.
Yeah, I like chocolate truffles too, I must admit.
Yeah.
Dresses.
Every time someone says dresses, I think of Regency era gowns because part of the reason I'm so got into historical is because I love the Regency clothes. I just think
Yeah.
they're gorgeous. So I think about those dresses. Those empire waist, beautiful gowns.
Yeah, I loved the corsets and big floating skirts, for that
Oh, I
was me.
know. Yeah.
Until I wore my wedding dress and then realized, oh, I can't sit down in this.
Oh, I know. I don't know how they did it. All that
I
stuff.
figured it out. I did figure it out, but it was hours later. I should
Yeah.
have had a practice run. but I didn't think it would be an issue because I'd worn big dresses before with my mom, but
Right.
they were like layered skirts, so it was
Right.
actual material that was layered and layered and layered and layered rather than just a hoop and
Right.
then layer. So yeah, total different experience. But actually,
Yeah.
you can fold the hoop around your bum.
Oh, really?
So if you put your hands down the back of your dress, and you have to do it kind of like discreetly, you can sort of float it underneath your legs and you can sit down that way.
Oh,
I wish
okay.
I'd known that for my ceremony though, because yeah. But
Now you
it
know.
looked great with the hoop on and the hoop off, so I didn't really care.
Yeah.
So horses.
Horses. That does make me think of my books. And it especially makes me think of the book More or Less a Marchioness because horses are so big a part of
They're
that book.
huge, big, yeah. They're huge
It's,
playing historical.
Yeah. And they're,
Which I thought you would connect to, I must admit.
Definitely. Yeah.
Fields.
Fields kind of goes with horses, right? Like, because it's you. If I hadn't read the word horses right before fields, I might not have thought of it that way. But what, of course, I imagine is horses running across fields.
Yeah, exactly.
And English country estates, the big.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Blue sky.
Same. Blue sky, fields, horses, women in riding habits, riding.
Yep.
Or even better, heroes in the boots with the riding crop and the breeches, because that's a good look.
And they're so tight, so you know what they're packing as well.
I know there's a lot of I swear that a huge part of that is why people are so into Regency is because of what men used to wear. So.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And of course, the last word is polo. Now, here in the UK, I'm just going to tell a quick thing. Polo is also a sweetie here as well as a sport.
Oh, really?
So when I'm saying polo in this concept, I'm meaning polo as in the sport, not
you mean like
the
sweetie.
Yeah.
It's funny. I've never written anything with polo in it. I mean, did they play polo back then? Did they play?
Yeah.
I know they played cricket, but I couldn't think of
upper elite did. So dukes, duchesses, earls, they went to polo games, and it was a very big thing for the royal family to do. Particularly, the royal family would have those events, and also it led into the Chelsea horse racing thing that we've got now. But horses was always a royal family tradition. It was always the upper echelons used to go to. The closer you were to the queen, the more likely your future husband was a polo player.
It's a polo player. See, now I have to do polo. And you've got to figure it out.
Both Harry and
William,
thank you. Had a blank there for a moment. They were polo players.
Yeah, I remember seeing them play polo in the media. There's a lot of pictures of them playing polo. Yeah.
In fact, I believe that the youngest one still plays polo even in California.
Yeah, I could believe it. You could find anything in California, right? But polo has a cool aesthetic too. It's kind of like the breeches and the red. Like I like that polo looks really neat. Like just the whole, all the horses and it would make a good scene in a historical, wouldn't it? Because
I think it would. And I mean, I actually thought it would be in Bridgerton. I don't know why.
There was no polo in Bridgerton. You're right.
I thought, there should be polo in Bridgerton. They have crochet, but
they didn't
have polo.
Crochet. Yeah, those scenes where they're playing croquet is those are great scenes. I thought that was one of the best scenes in the series. Was
I almost wish they had that kind of side in the first season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I think it would have been interesting to have seen the two leading female and male playing that together,
competing.
I was almost sad he wasn't in the second season.
I was too, actually. It felt weird to see Daphne without Simon.
It did. It felt
a
wrong.
Little like you noticed him missing. And I liked his character a lot, and I like the actor too.
You never know; he might come back in season 3.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope
I
so.
hope so too. I hope so too.
Yeah.
Well, that's the end of our podcast, folks. It has been absolutely amazing to be on with Anna Bradley. Do you
Thank
want to
you.
take a second to tell people where they can find you?
You can find me pretty much anywhere. Barnes and Noble, Amazon, Kobo, Apple Books, Google,
Where
like
does
the
books, you can
usual
find
stuff.
her.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know that feeling because everyone's like, oh, where can I get you? And I'm like, anywhere books are sold.
Anywhere books are sold.
You might
Yeah.
have to order me in, but,
Right. Right.
same saying. But yeah,
Yeah.
no, I get that.
You can find me on, you
Well,
can find my website too. It's www.annabradley.net. And you can there's
yeah.
links to all the books on there too, of course. So
Yeah, and that's so much easier if you have like a
it
site
is
that people can
easier.
go on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because it's less stressful that way. Like
Yeah.
I try and like remember where my books are, and it's when somebody asks me on Twitter, and I'm like,
I
shoot,
know.
and then I have to go look for them. But I've stopped doing that now, and I just direct them to the website. I'm like, yeah,
Yeah,
the
it
website,
is easier with the website. Yeah. But
yeah. So,
thank you so
but
much
it's
for having me.
well, you're gonna have to come back next time you've
I'd
got a
love
book coming
to.
out. And you're
Yeah,
gonna,
I'd love
yeah,
to.
and if you're gonna, what I do is I do spotlights. So,
Uh-huh.
if your publisher doesn't mind sending me a hard copy, because I'm not able to read ebooks because of the screen thing,
Right.
I will spotlight you on one of
I could
our book conversation episodes.
I'm sure I could get them to send you a hard copy. That would be no problem at all. Yeah. That would be
Sounds like
great.
fun.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you everybody, and come back next week where we've got a really interesting guest for you. You'll just have to wait to see who it is.